Real fake, real fake, real fake, real fake news.
Welcome to the Real Fake News on KPCRadio.com, a critically sarcastic analysis of news. In this show, we will differentiate the real news from the fake, with help from comedians, college professors, advocates, and experts. Today, we will discuss neighborhood councils, legal cannabis social equity, Biden's gropey hands, and more. I'm your host, Jesse Bertel. Joining me here today, we have LA comedian Mark Hurtado.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey, it's going good.
And Van Nuys Neighborhood Council Member Jason Ackerman. How you doing?
Great, glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, guys. Our discussion today will be formatted as a game of real news, fake news, where I present real news stories or fake news stories and ask you questions about it. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
All right. Let's play the game. In real news, the LA Times reported that neighborhood councils are being shaped by corporations like Starbucks, with reports of people being bussed into council meetings from across town like background actors. Does this poison the integrity of the democratic process? Now, you're a neighborhood council member, and you probably know about this. What can you tell us about this?
Okay, so this is more old news than anything else. This is back from 2012. Now we have much stronger language limiting who is eligible to become a stakeholder to vote in a neighborhood council election. But most neighborhood councils have language like stakeholders are individuals who live, work, own property, or have an ongoing commitment to the community. So you're part of a volunteer organization, or you're a member of a faith-based community or something like that. That's really what this was that's kind of like what most neighborhood councils have. We used to have this thing where if you just prove you have some kind of like very loose commitment, like you go to Starbucks in Encino, for example, that you should be eligible to vote in the Encino neighborhood council. So that was like that didn't happen there, but that happened in other neighborhood councils. I personally think that this is an overreaction.
Fake news, huh?
It's fake news, yeah. Because there was an open mic in Encino I used to go into called the Soapbox Sessions, and they met every week on Thursday nights outside the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf at Woodley and Ventura. And I thought that those people should be able to vote in the neighborhood council elections, but because it wasn't a nonprofit and it wasn't a faith organization, without that looser interpretation of what is a stakeholder, those people were no longer eligible to vote in the election.
So they just removed general experience. It doesn't. It has to be a specific type.
It has to be a structured kind of experiential or kind of thing. Like you're part of the Los Encinos Docents Association or something like that. Interestingly enough, we had an Armenian church that did bus in a lot of people, and they were all registered through the Armenian church. Not everyone lived there, but they all belonged to that church.
Yeah. Isn't it possible, though, you can just go to these church meetings every week, but you don't live in the neighborhood and you don't really experience the neighborhood at all, so you kind of actually don't know what you're talking about. You just go to one building, maybe McDonald's or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the term Starbucks stakeholder came from. Someone just goes to Starbucks once in a while in whatever community, and that's they're tied to the community.
Yeah.
I would argue if you belong to a church and you go to church, on a regular basis, or synagogue, that you probably do have a little more engagement level with the community than just someone who just goes to Starbucks once in a while. Because, once church gets out or before, you're going to go to local businesses maybe, and maybe we'll go to lunch or dinner afterwards or breakfast, depending on where you're going. So it is possible to have that kind of organization would be more like concrete connection. But I think that at the same time that there needs to be space for people who are part of less structured organizations like open mics to be able to have a voice in neighborhood councils, especially when neighborhood councils can determine things like land use and what kind of how late you want venues to be open till.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. It's very interesting.
I feel like if you just drive through it every day for work, you should get a vote because those potholes affect you too,
Yeah.
Like that traffic affects you too, right?
Well, if you hit a pothole, you can use the My 311 app and report that.
Oh, yeah?
And you don't have to live in anywhere particular to report those out.
Is it all road stuff?
My 311 is also trash pickup. Like if you see someone just dumped a couch and junk on the side of a road, you can call 311 and they'll pick it up.
You said it's called My 311?
My 311, My LA 311 is the name of the app. You can also call 311, or you can just like look up LA 311, on the web.
I learned something. My 311 sounds like a dating site for some reason. I don't know why.
All right, well, let's go ahead and play again. In fake news, according to Filter Mag, the funding from LA's social equity program provided by Measure M, which was created to ensure people most impacted by the war on drugs would benefit from legal cannabis sales, is being diverted away from the impacted communities and instead given to the LAPD. What's going on here?
That's some real news.
Does the LAPD deserve this money? I mean, they're losing money now that weed is legal, huh?
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're already getting a huge chunk of money from the Measure M and Prop 64 revenues for enforcement of oversight and management. So the fact that they took this this comparatively small $10 million chunk of change that's supposed to go towards helping communities of color and working class communities is just outrageous. And this is a discussion going on right now in City Hall.
I mean, yeah, I can't speak too much on it because I don't know a lot about it. But all I know is going to LAPD doesn't like rile me as much as like if it went to like high level people already with money. You know what I'm saying? Kind of a thing. It's at least going towards something more blue collar. And I'm not saying that's better. I'm just saying. But
it was promised to repay the kind of that social equity, that balance that of the the war on drugs that wasn't affected. Do you think it would be better put there? Yeah,
I do. I just when it says it went to LAPD, I was like, oh well, that kind of actually feels like that will kind of come back around. I off instinctually, not too happy about it. It sounds like just some political BS.
You disagree, Jason?
I disagree. I think that if we're going to put that money into any city department, it should probably go something more like to Parks and Rec, or to LAUSD for after-school programs, or to cultural affairs, or something like that that actually, can directly, help the communities.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like LAPD helps community, though, right? I'd rather go to all those too over LAPD. But
if you're middle class or up in white, sure, yeah, they help your community absolutely. But if you're working class and a person of color, it's kind of a.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily fair, though. I mean, even in poor communities, obviously there are bad things that happen, and there's not, it's not a perfect thing, but they are providing a service for every community.
Already, think
Warning number 1.
We can bleep stuff, right?
Did I swear?
Yes, you swear.
Yes, you did, Jason. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead to another story. Let's play again. In real news, according to CNN, Joe Biden's half apology for groping women and children didn't help his credibility. So what do you guys think about VP Gropy hands? Is this real news?
No, I mean, Joe Biden for sure does that, and it's for sure creepy, but it doesn't, until like weird allegations or something comes out, it just seems like he is being a creep. And yeah, for sure he dropped the ball in the apology, like poor choice of how to do it.
I mean, so it's not illegal to be
with it. Yeah, but it doesn't, I don't get too caught up on.
I don't think it, is good optics in the post Me Too world.
Yeah.
That we need, and also, I mean, Joe Biden is definitely not a friend of the progressive movement, and he's definitely not. And if you're a student, as I suppose if you're listening to college radio, you probably are. Joe Biden's really not your friend because Joe Biden helped several times to keep it so you can't discharge student loan debt if you file for bankruptcy.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Keep your gropey hands off of my financial aid, Joe Biden.
Yeah, but that's a better reason to not like Joe Biden, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It is creepy and he should stop doing it for sure. I'm surprised he made it this far, just being a hair sniffer. That's not like, I don't know how that gets supported.
Well, before, like last year or the year before when the Me Too movement really broke, this wasn't taken seriously as a problem. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of the way it was. And we now live in a world where we have kind of come to a tacit consensus that no, I mean, that may be the way it was, but that's not the way it should be or the way it has, is anymore.
Sure.
And so, we need to hold people accountable for their actions.
Yeah. It is all about accountability.
So is CNN overreacting with this or no?
I mean, CNN overreacts to everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, CNN has 24 hours of news cycle to fill. Mm-hmm. So they're doing their job the way they've interpreted it rather than, diverting some time to, like, actually talking about things that affect people's lives.
Feels like a reach.
Unless you're a victim. But
Yeah.
All right, let's end on that one and play again. In fake news, John Oliver committed an entire episode to body slamming the WWE CEO Vince McMahon for becoming a, quote, billionaire on the broken backs of his non-employees. Is this time for a complete labor reform overhaul?
Sure. Yeah, it'd only be a good thing. Like, what are the downsides to it? Vince McMahon makes a little less money, you know? I'm kind of close to this just because this is very similar to Comedy World where there's no unions or anything like that. So you enter this this industry that's very passion forward. It's people love to do this. It fulfills them. It's one of the best things to do in the world, both wrestling and comedy if you're a fan of either. Mm-hmm. And so you can kind of mistreat people or give them the short end of the stick and they'll keep coming because they just love what they do, even if it's not fair. And you can see that. You can see the correlation. What was it, like the deaths of wrestlers? It's like 3 times the amount of pro NFL players, which is already 3 times the amount of normal people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
when you're worse than the NFL,
that's not random, you know? But removing just the people die for all sorts of reasons and stuff, the access to healthcare and stuff and how limited it is and if you got an injury and you 6 weeks later, if you haven't fixed it or if you're not trying to wrestle, you can just be completely cut off, you know.
Right. And Jason, what do you think about the issue of them not being employees?
Well, I think this is just I think this is a problem in a broader spectrum of industries, but it's really bad in wrestling because even the WWE concedes without our wrestlers we're nothing. And without our fans, we're nothing. And that they're tapping, and that wrestlers have to turn to the fans to cover their health care expenses for injuries suffered on the job.
Right, like GoFundMe's
GoFundMe, but I mean, this whole independent contractor stuff is, this gigantic loophole that needs to be closed as soon as possible because it's not just wrestlers; it's things like Lyft drivers and Uber drivers, who don't, reap the full benefit of their work. But with the WWE being as dangerous as it is, it's really like crazy that Vince McMahon is making this much money, and there's whereas with the NFL, and they talked about this in the segment, in every other professional sports league, the players are covered by unions.
Right.
They get them health care and retirement funds.
Independent contractors can't unionize.
Independent contractors can't unionize.
Other benefits to being an actual employee that you could think of?
Overtime pay would be one of them that you qualify for that. Retirement plans, just the stability of knowing that you can't be fired for some random reason.
What about comedians? I mean, how is that ever going to be changed in the comedy world? Because
I've heard that it's been tried a couple. We're a bunch of cats, man. You can't just.
You kind of have to employ. You call around and you try to book a gig. I mean.
There's no real like WrestleMania is a franchise, which they absorbed a bunch of smaller franchises, and now that is like there's not that in comedy. Comedy, there's a couple of strings of clubs and stuff, and you can get in on those. But even just being in on the improv circuit or something like that, or like I don't know, Hyena circuit, that's still not enough. You have to go to other clubs.
And even
too.
the top ones aren't full employees anywhere. They're you're always going to be a freelance in that kind of gig, or like an actor, and you're kind of working.
You can't name a comedian that like people love, even if they're like low key, that also doesn't have TV credits, that also hasn't been in this show or featured in this movie or some really popular podcast or something like that. Right. You have to do other stuff too.
I mean,
there's no there's no WWE for comedy.
I mean, there is a union out there that actually would probably gladly welcome comedians and wrestlers into their ranks at the same time, which is the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, which is which is opposed to being a trade-specific union. It's an industrial union, so it's
maybe they're just not advertising well enough because I don't know that a lot of people know about it.
Unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of the beast when you're an anti-capitalist union, is that you don't have a lot of funds for advertising and lobbying.
Gotcha.
But they did absorb the Teamsters for a while, a couple of years ago, and they took the longshoremen, not the Teamsters. Sorry, they took the contract from the longshoremen's union and became the representative voice of the longshoremen for a while. But the nice thing about the IWW is that anybody can join. You don't have to be a skilled laborer. You can be an unskilled laborer. And not to say that comedians and wrestlers are unskilled. Obviously, there's great skill required in being a comedian or a wrestler, but and it's not mutually exclusive. Like if you join the IWW, you don't have to renounce your membership in SCIU or the Writers Guild or the Directors Guild or something like that.
Well, wait, I'm confused. So say I want to join the IWW and I have to pay some sort of fee or something like that.
Yeah.
How does that come back to me and help me in like comedy or like getting work or paid more or less or like what are they like? What would they do? We have to create a new thing through the IWW?
So there are different branches of the IWW, and basically the idea is that when one branch of the union goes on strike, the whole thing goes on strike, right? So, I mean, obviously the decision to go on strike is taken very seriously. And yes, you can join the IWW for like, $25 or something like that.
Yeah,
But it's just a broader way to build a broader coalition, which is needed sorely in general in society between working peoples of different trades. When we can get when the IWW was particularly strong in the 1910s, they actually they pushed a lot of progressive labor reforms through, including like the 8-hour work week. So it's it was outlawed for a long time because they were such a threat to the status quo. But they're back. They're now okay to be reestablished.
So are you saying, just to be clear, the IWW could help facilitate unions? They're not the answer.
They are a union. So
yeah.
So if you wanted to organize a Lyft drivers local or a comedians local under the IWW, you could do that. And that's as opposed to like if you try to do that under some of the other unions, they may be like no, you don't qualify to be in our union.
Is there a realm where, because I've seen this a little bit in acting world, where let's just say 1,000 comedians get unionized through the IWW. We're starting from the ground up, however that process goes, and now I'm a union official, and now I try to get work, and via the union they make sure that I'm guaranteed blank and blank and blank. Is there an area where clubs can be like, oh, your union, we don't work union workers because of all that stuff, like where you can actually kind of basically lose work because of it? Because I've seen similar stuff with SAG where you can't do a lot of non-union stuff.
Right. Well, that's the reverse. Like you would normally see something like it'd be a union club, and they would not let you in unless you're a union member. It's very rare. I mean, since there's not a huge comedians union yet,
sure,
there's really not the need for that rule yet. But I mean, that's kind of the idea, is that once you get to the point where you have enough infrastructure in place, you can create a closed shop environment where you protect the union workers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to another story. It's a very interesting topic. Let's play again. In real news, according to Vox, Elizabeth Warren wants CEOs to go to jail when their companies behave badly. So, what do you guys think? Should CEOs be more accountable to their companies' actions?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
No disagreement there, huh?
Yeah, disagreement.
That's kind of the problem, right, of people not facing the consequences. You can take like bailouts and stuff like that, where if, say, we reached an area where they did face consequences, there was an example made, instead of trying to keep the trend going, they'd have to figure out, hey, we can't do that again. Like, what's a better way to not run into this? We could see some real change via accountability, right?
Absolutely. And, the crazy thing is that the CEOs get compensated for a job well done, whether or not the job was actually well done. I think that if the CEO could get fired, but even if they get fired, they still get these tremendous, like, golden parachute packages and sweetheart deals on their way out. So I think that, going back to the banking situation in 2008, we only jailed, one banker, when it was like the entire industry was in on the game. And I think we need, that is a clear sign that we need much stricter rules about, company mispractice and organizational mispractice.
Let's get some CEOs in jail, huh? Let's get them in there.
Nobody objects to that, huh? Is it just because they're rich and we're not? Or
No, not just because of that, but because sometimes in some instances they can actually cause a lot of harm and be doing a lot. Yeah, they can be messing up a lot of things and face no consequences because of it. They can be outside of it.
Is Elizabeth Warren just politicking here, or do you think she's serious?
I think she's serious. This has kind of been a running thing for her since she first took office, even before she took office, as part of the the effort to establish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or I think that's what it's called. But basically, her argument is that if your toaster blows up, we have regulations to help you, and get a settlement for your toaster blowing up in your
Probably
face.
thanks to Ralph Nader.
Right. But if your but if your home loan blows up in your face, you're in deep trouble because there's nothing to protect you. Yeah. So I mean, this is one of those things that she's legitimately been passionate about consistently throughout her career. If you followed her at all, that she's very much about bringing accountability to Wall Street and big money and getting it out of the political system as much as possible.
Take those CEOs down.
Let's do it.
Take them down.
All right, let's play again. Fake news. In our final story, according to City Watch, Woodland Hills Warner Center Neighborhood Council wants to reopen the inquiry into a 1959 nuclear meltdown at Santa Susana Field Laboratory, which was never cleaned up, but received no clear answers from the Department of Toxic Substances Control. So do we in our neighborhood have a right to know whether or not there's nuclear waste and whether or not it poses a health risk?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think transparency is always a good thing, right?
I do too. I mean, the crazy thing is that last year we had the Woolsey fire, which was one of the biggest fires ever seen in LA County.
Oh, right, yeah.
And this fire started at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory and burned a lot of the grounds. So in addition to this uncleaned, nuclear site, we now have what might be, burned particles of nuclear material in the air around Woodland Hills and Warner Center, which is not good considering they were also recently in the path of the Aliso Canyon blowout. So, I mean, the West San Fernando Valley, really is kind of getting the raw end of the deal on a lot of these things, and we absolutely do need to know what happened with the Santa Susana Field Laboratory and what happened after the Woolsey fire and before the Woolsey fire, so we can assess, is there radioactive stuff in the air and is it harming the people?
And will I get superpowers?
Well,
no, you won't get superpowers.
Well, my question is,
super cancer.
It's not as good.
Yeah, I'm on that same team. In there's nothing that tests for radioactivity just in general around places with plants. We don't have like tabs on like a yearly radioactive kind of measurement type of a thing.
I'm sure we do. I mean, but unfortunately, a lot of these things tend to be classified.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of organizations that are kind of like paying attention to this. A lot of the environmental orgs, particularly, but it's kind of hard to get clear data on this because it's that kind of top secret.
Yeah.
But I just want to say while we're here and talking about Woodland Hills Warner Center Neighborhood Council, this is another reason to get involved in your local neighborhood council because you have the power to affect this kind of change and really stand up for your community and get involved. And our elections are coming up; they're divided by region, and they're gonna be happening over the next couple of months. And if you live in on the other side of the hill from the San Fernando Valley, there are much later candidate registration windows, and you might be able to still run for a neighborhood council. So if you're really passionate about making a change in the world in your community, neighborhood councils are a great way to do that. I'm gonna warn you, it's not as fun as a protest. There's a lot of meetings and a lot of rules you gotta learn how to deal with. But this is, there's 15 seats on the LA City Council, and you need at least $1 million to win any of them, basically. Neighborhood councils, there's 99 neighborhood councils. There's thousands of seats, and we need more perspectives from progressives, young people, people of color, working class people, women, students, and please get involved. Please help empower LA.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. But before we go, I'd like to give you both a chance to tell our listeners where they can find out more about you. Jason, would you like to start?
Well, I don't have a website, but if you want to learn more about neighborhood councils, please go to empowerla.org.
Okay. And Mark?
I'm doing all sorts of stuff. I'd really, really like to plug my show that I co-produce. It's at the Mid-City Art House. The next one is this Friday. It's called Laughing on the Inside. It's a comedy show that all proceeds go to charity. It's free to go to. We do have a $10 suggested donation. But, if you just want to come and see some great comedians, we have comedians from Late Night, from Comedy Central, from TV, like you name it. They're all going up. This Friday, we do it bi-weekly. But it's called Laughing on the Inside. The proceeds are through the Fate Foundation, an organization that helps provide clean water globally, especially in the Philippines. And I would love to see you there. It'd be this Friday at the Mid-City Art House in Culver City. I guess it's in Mid-City. And starts at 9 o'clock.
Any social medias or?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you just search for either Laughing on the Inside, Comedy Show for Charity on Facebook, or there's links on Eventbrite as well, and a couple of other sites, or just check events at the Mid-City Art House. Yeah,
All right.
we'd love to see you guys. It is 420 friendly. I should feature that. So,
you go.
if you're don't like to be around that does kind of happen there, because we do have a couple of sponsorships from dispensaries as well.
Fair warning.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for joining me here today on The Real Fake News. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Next Wednesday, my guests will be comedian and progressive activist Elizabeth Croydon and filmmaker and modern monetary theory proponent Virginia Kotz. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon at Jesse Bertel. Tune in to The Real Fake News every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. on kpcradio.com and the following day on YouTube.
Real fake, real fake, real fake, real fake news.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. That was a fun
Yeah. Sorry for the F-bomb.
Sorry.
It's like the worst one that I said. It just fell out. I don't even cuss that much.
They didn't notice until you just said
Yeah,
that.
because it was so smooth. I know, it just felt natural.
That's the problem. It's very hard to tell when someone's about to swear.